Board on this computer. Right, we are live, and today on my podcast, we're carrying this on. We're doing one a week at the minute. It's good. I have got the new and now reigning European Drift Masters champion with me. Today, I am joined by the superstar that is Conor Shanahan. Conor, thank you so much for your time today, dude.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this one, man, because like I was with Jack, you're one of the guys that I've known the longest in the drift world anyway. And it just so happens to be you are one of the best as well. So it's a joy for me to be able to watch. I'll fill people in real quick. I actually met Conor Shanahan when he was 13 years old, and you took me around Mondello Park in your 780 odd brake horsepower S13.
Yeah.
And it scared the absolute daylights out of me because I remember looking over and you were tiny, man, and you were just like, oh, it's great.
Back where it all started. Yeah, good times for sure.
It was great, man. And now we've been able to watch you blossom into a European champion, which must be outrageous to feel. How does it feel, man? Let's go straight to this Drift Masters thing, because obviously this is the most recent thing that's happened. How are you feeling off the back of this massive achievement?
Yeah, it's amazing, to be honest. I think being at home is the nicest part. Like, it's been quite cool, to be honest, to be just home with my friends, who've known the journey, have known like all the stuff, what's happened. And yeah, when I won the championship, of course, it was a massive like feeling. It was more relief probably than enjoyment, to be honest. It was something what I've wanted for years, man. I've dreamt of this since I've been a kid, and always thought about what it would feel like when it happened. And I think, people were like, oh, what was the feeling like? And, not in a cocky way, but I always thought to myself, that day will come. I know that I can be a champion. I've been brought up around champions. I've been, in this sport for kind of only one reason. So I think, yeah, when all the pieces of the puzzle came together, the feeling was pretty nice for sure. It was just such a relief to finally say that we've done it. And like 5 years now we've been in Drift Masters, which is crazy to think that as well. Like I still feel young, and I feel like I'm still like the new person there, but yeah, 5 years is like, wow. And yeah, of course we managed to do it, but yeah, the feeling wasn't any different. But for sure, the drive home back into Killavullen, where I'm from, when I came home Monday, was like, I honestly was just like, I never felt anything like that. It was just like passing where I played sports when I was a kid, passing where I went for school. And I think it's not so much about like coming back to the winning thing. It's kind of more of just, knowing that there was many a days I left, walking out of them places thinking like, am I crazy? Like, do I stop? Why are my mom and dad so obsessed with this journey? Like it's, so all that stuff was coming back. So yeah, to be honest, it's just cool. It's nice to be at home. It's nice to share time with everybody, but it's back to business for me. It's back to work on bigger things. I have got so much planned, and I want to show that I can be a champion for a long time is the plan.
Well, you said you feel young, which you are, Conor. you are still young.
I think in drifting terms, it's not young though. It's crazy how, like, even now I went to a national event a couple of weeks ago in Ireland, and like I think there's something like 16 junior drivers, like all under the age of 16, and
that's
like,
amazing.
Wow, I was like, that's impressive. So
a
I think, yeah,
a lot of them coming from Ireland, right? Like you've got a lot of youth coming out of Ireland in this unique niche. You have a huge like coming up through the ranks.
Yeah, for sure. I think where it's kind of pushed in a young age here, other really right now back home in Ireland is super impressive.
Yeah, it's amazing. So with the Drift Masters, I want to just kind of touch on this Drift Masters thing for a minute, because it is, I know you're so cool about it, but it is such a big achievement. It must be amazing for the whole team as a collective, because from someone that's on the ground level that gets to see everything at a ground level, I get to kind of just put myself wherever I want at these events, as you've seen, and I capture all the highs and the lows. So I'm there from the days where, like in last year's championship running, where your car broke, right, in Poland last year, that knocked you out of the championship. So I got to be with you and your mom, very upset, and then coming around to this year, I get to be on the track while you're running to the stands. So I get to live this journey with you, and it's just so amazing for me. But the huge group of guys that don't get to really see the live stream doesn't focus on those guys, and they're the guys that keep your cars running, and they're all friends and family, right? So How is it keeping the morale up in the camp? Obviously, because it must be hard for everybody when stuff isn't going right. Obviously, this reward of like, how is it for you as like main guy? You know?
Yeah, it's like without those guys, it's never possible. You know, it's not possible to do anything without it. And to be honest, if somebody asked during this year, are you going to win a championship this year? Absolutely not. Like, it was the worst year I've ever had. Everything went wrong, every event. And I think everything went wrong, but I also look, when everything went wrong, also they went wrong at the right time. It just made things like super stressful. But, you know, to be honest, the reason I think why I found it winning the championship, and for me, it wasn't really winning the championship over 6 rounds. It was winning the championship right there in Poland, because that, you know, like, I had to win the event, you know, I had to, and like, full respect to Laurie also. That guy drove like a champion, you know, he drove. If I didn't perform to be the champion, he absolutely deserved, you know, he put himself in the perfect place for the fight. And for me, no practice, everything what was going on, I think they're the reason why I drove like that in the final. I drove with like passion, just, you know, of the belief what they have is honestly mind blowing. You know, there's like sometimes I'm just like, like, let's just put it in the trailer. I just want to leave now. And they somehow find a solution, you know, with my dad, my crazy dad, who's doing stuff where people are like, what are you doing? And somehow make stuff work, you know. But yeah, I think, yeah, you touched on it quite good. You know, they probably don't get the credit what they deserve, but for us, you know, we win everything as a team, and Jack is also included in that team, because I think we probably have a massive advantage. You know, we both drive the same cars. We're both top level drivers, so we can relate a lot of information to each other, you know, if we're struggling with stuff or whatever. But yeah, controlling the emotions is the biggest thing. And I think we also probably struggle a little bit sometimes to control emotions with two brothers. You know, like, I could be having the worst day ever and the car is tore to pieces, and then Jack goes out and qualifies first, or vice versa. So it's, you know, that can be a little bit like negative sometimes for the team, you know, that like the energy can be drawn down from one of us, which is like fully understandable. You know, if we're, you know, Jack in Poland was quite difficult, and, you know, I just knew when that happened, you know, I was like, you know, I felt shit for him, of course, obviously, but I was like, I kind of had to just draw myself away from that. You know, I couldn't speak to him until after the event. I just told the guys, look, just leave him. I was like, we know what he's going to be like. And it would be the same exactly if it happened to me.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, it's difficult when you're both wanting to do so well, and you both have such high expectations. And also the team have high expectations. They want to win. They don't go there for us to finish in top 32, top 16. So I think, yeah, that's probably the biggest thing what people don't see is like controlling everything, you know, when we're under stress, when we're, you know, it's crazy. There's so much stuff what isn't seen, like, and even we've thought about doing some stuff where people see more. And, you know, I'm honestly like the luckiest guy in the world to have the people what I have, including Jack, including my dad, my mom, you know, from way back. But even up until now, you know, it's my team. It's a limited company now, which is like mind blowing. Who would ever thought that? But, you know, my engine went on Friday when we got to the track.
Yeah, let's tell this story real quick, because this was just the shittest thing in the entire. I want to just also say it from my point as well. I want this story to come from both angles, right? So we're in Poland. I land with Ian Waddington and Jordan Butters in the middle of fucking nowhere, right? At this airport, in the middle of nowhere. So Jordan needs to go get our rental car. And me and Ian are like, we'll go wait outside because the airport's tiny. There's a load of noise, loads of annoying people everywhere. So let's just go outside, get some space. We walk outside and we see this vending machine. We're like, let's go grab a drink. And then as I'm paying for my drink, I hear, I'm like, you know, like, what the fuck? And then over in the distance, I see a Red Bull GT86 drifting. So let's start from this moment, because I saw the car working and I was like, oh, fucking sweet. Like, Conor's over there. I don't know what the fuck you're doing at an airport drifting around, but Conor's over there. I think I saw Zawetsky and Kuba Poskonsky and maybe one more car, but just in the distance. It was right over in this. I can't remember who exactly was there, but I was like, oh, they're probably doing something for Red Bull. That was just what I assumed, because obviously the Red Bull boys were there. So I was like, okay. So what were you guys doing there to start with? Because the car was working at that moment.
Yeah, so basically roll it back. We arrived to Poland on Monday. Nice and early, it was nice, cool city, just relax. And we had a video project to do on Wednesday with Red Bull, which was the Pass the Can project, you know, where I passed the can to Cuba.
Yeah.
So, and also was quite good because the last car I drove before I went to Poland was the Red Bull Drift Brothers M4, which is left and drive, very different. So I was quite happy about the video project, just get back into the groove. You know, Drift Masters doesn't offer a lot of practice, so you need to be on your A game from the minute you take the car off the trailer. So yeah, it's quite a crazy story, to be honest. So in Germany, we had this problem with the car, wouldn't start. So like just would start in a push, no problem, but kept swinging over. So all week, me and one of my mechanics are in Poland, like stressed, like what? And this story is actually bananas, like, and we're like, what is it? You know, like what is it? And Cuba's guys have been so good. They gave us the workshop. One of these mechanics is working with us also. We literally stripped all the wiring looms out of the car, changed like everything, like every single thing what's possibly wrong with this. Like it's bringing a trigger fault. So, you know, it's like when it's swinging over, it's not getting the crank signal. So it has to be like ECU or the wiring to the crankshaft sensor, you know, in our heads, we're thinking this. So we change everything. We go to the video project and the car didn't start twice in the day. And we were like, okay, whatever. Let's just forget about it now. Let's just carry on with the day, get the video project done. We knew the car was running while pushing. But bear in mind, the car was like this for the whole event in Germany. So we get to the track after the video project, and this is playing on the back of my mind like all week. And I'm like calling Jack, being like, Jack, like, I want this fixed, like. And Jack's like, worst case scenario, we just have to push the car. And I'm like, yeah, but like, you know, that's like, if I stall the car, you know, that's all that stuff's playing in my mind.
Yeah.
And we took the car off the trailer and we got to the track, and my dad had arrived. Or no, my dad actually hadn't arrived. Me and Jack were just talking, and one of my mechanics got in the car and he started it to put it off the trailer, off Cuba's trailer, and it started no problem. But then he stalled the car and he went to start the car with the clutch pressed, and it wouldn't start. And my Jack just quickly was like, put the car back in neutral and see does the car start. Put the car back in neutral, the car started. And Jack just looked at me and was like, I think I know the problem. And I was like, I think I do too. And I was like, it's a shit one. And which is bananas. So we put the car on 4-axis stands, took the front pulley off, and got one of my mechanics to sit in the car, press the clutch, and the crank moved like maybe like an inch, which is, if people don't understand that, that's really bad. As in, like, what the most impressive part of this story is that the engine was running. Like, it done a whole event at 8,500 revs on the limiter, and it didn't blow up. So a credit to DBM Engineering for building a serious engine, because we're like, how is it not blowing up?
And it's 2JZ. Let's tell everybody what it is.
So there should be Conrads everywhere if this is happening. Like, and the thing is still together, running perfect. So then we're like, oh shit. So we dropped the sump, and the thrust washers, what are part of the bearing, are in the sump, like big chunks of metal. And we're like, oh, this is really bad. Like this.
And where was this? You found this out? Was this at the Red Bull?
No, this is Thursday. Like
getting on Thursday at the track
before qualifying. Right. So, and it's like probably 8 a.m. like, or 8 p.m. sorry, like in the evening. So it's like we're like what 15 hours from qualifying. So it's like, okay, this is a big problem. So it's back and forward on the phone to my engine builder, Jeroen, which like this guy, DBM Engineering, is the reason why I won a championship. They have been the reason why it's been possible for us to do Drift Masters the past 5 years. And this story I'm about to tell will tell you what kind of guy this guy is. So Jeroen couldn't come to the event because of some reasons. And I called him and I was like, what are we going to do? So he told the guys what to do to check the bearings. So then we dropped the crank, and my dad was there and they checked it, and they were like, no, like we need to put a new crank in the car and new bearings, because it's possible that it would blow up if we just put bearings in it now. So we were like, none of us trusted each other to do that. You know, we don't do that side of work. You know, Jack doesn't build engines. He does everything else, but he doesn't build engines. So I called, this is probably 10 o'clock actually. I went to Cuba's workshop to look at a crank to make sure it was okay, a 2J crank, what we were going to use. And my engine builder, Jeroen, who lives in Amsterdam, like 40 minutes from Amsterdam, called me and was like, I'm on the way. And I was like, what? And he was like, I'm on the way. He was like, I will be there at 6 a.m. in the morning to rebuild the engine.
To Warsaw, Poland. This is where he drove.
So it's like 1,300 kilometers. And I'm like, what? And he was like, just go to bed. He was like, tell the guys rip the engine. He was like, I'll be there at 6 a.m. in the morning to fix it. And I was trying to work in my head. I was like, there's no way you can be here at 6 a.m. in the morning. It's 1,300 kilometers. It's not possible. Like, so he was just like, shut up, go to bed. He was like, I promise you will qualify tomorrow. And I was like, okay. Went back, told the guys. My dad was like, is he crazy? Like, what the heck?
And that's John Shanahan asking if someone's crazy.
So,
this is the level where we're at.
But that's like, for me, it was like, okay, I went to bed, I woke up at 6 a.m. also the next morning. We had quite an early briefing, so I got up and I called him. He was like, yeah, I'm at the track. Like, he was like, I almost have the engine back together. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I was like, that is crazy. So they rebuilt the engine, had it back in the car. We missed the first practice session, which we knew we were going to miss the first practice session. And we went to start the car just before the second practice session, and the car wouldn't start. And I was like, oh, like, never drove this track before. I was like, please tell me that this thing is going to start. Turns out it was quite a silly problem, but it was just a problem what we couldn't put our hands on. And I ended up missing the second practice session also. So I'm there ready for the biggest weekend of my life, sitting on zero practice, had to go out and qualify in front of thousands of people, and still wanted to win the championship more than anybody. And all this stuff is going on, and like, I'm just like, this is it, like, it's done. I was like, how am I supposed to win a championship when this is happening? So ends up going out in the first qualifying run, scored 95, and just trusted off the simulator, like, just literally put the car into gear. I even said to my spotter on the starting line of the first qualifying run, I was like, this could go seriously bad. I was like, I'm literally just going to drive this lap as if I'm playing the simulator. And he was like, go for it. And it was so accurate. Like, and I actually, if you remember the run, remember I almost took the front, like, I hit the wall in the front.
Yeah, I do remember.
And I was in the car being like, oh, that part's not perfectly accurate. I finished the lap, and my spotter was like to me, you are crazy. Like, he was like, I thought you were going to do like an 80.
Is that Kevin in your ear?
Yeah. So I was like, and he was like, man, he was like, that was fairly mad. Like, and I was like, well, I may as well have to go for it, you know. And got back to the pits, scored 95 in the second qualifying run as well. I finished like P5 in qualifying. I was super happy. And I knew that the track suited me as well. You know, these tracks really suit my driving style. So I was like, oh, unreal. Car was perfect. Nothing wrong with the car. And that for my team already was a win. You know, like, I came in like, and, you know, I think it's like when I'm saying to somebody, oh, my engine builder drove 1,300 kilometers all night, didn't sleep. He didn't sleep until that evening to make sure that the car was perfect. You know, they're the guys you need to win a championship. They're the guys you need in your program, or else it's not possible. Because if you employ somebody in drifting, in the drift world, and they say, oh yeah, I'll work 9 to 5, forget about it. It's never going to work. You know, you're never going to be involved in a successful race team. And that goes from all terms of motorsport. And I've seen that enough over the years. You know, I've seen how much work my dad, my brother have had to put in, even when we were racing, you know, just normal motorsport cars outside of professional motorsport. The graft what has to go in if you want to win is mind blowing. So I think when we got back for qualifying, we all sat around, and that for my team was like I was like, you guys are legends. Like, I was like, you're all zero sleep, perfect day. I was like, we're in the show. I was like, cars are perfect. You know, we had a late start the next day, so it was quite nice. Everyone just went back to the hotels, got some sleep, woke up the next morning. And then I was like, oh, this is it, like, game on. I was like, I'm ready to, you know, get the job done here. Like, and, you know, I was so confident about it, you know, and I think it wasn't confident that I was just like, I'm better than everybody else. It was kind of just trying to keep my mindset right of, I need to win. You know, I was like, you know, I remember I got back to the hotel and I was talking to James Dean on Instagram. He was driving an FD. And, you know, James texted me and was like, you're more hungry than anybody else for this. He was like, you just got to believe in that. He was like, just stay calm. We were talking about some things, you know, and he's my best friend, but he's the guy who's won probably 8 European championships, multiple Formula Drift championships. You know, he's the guy who knows how to do it all. And for me, it was, you know, just had a quick conversation, went to bed, and I woke up with that mindset, just like went to briefing, had my headphones in, didn't really talk to anybody, just kind of isolated myself from even my team. Like, I think I didn't speak 2 words to my team until I won the championship. I just literally, I was gone. Like, I've just drove the car back to the pits, jumped out, went watching on my own. I was just trying to, you know, like, completely separate myself, just my earphones in, listen to some music. And obviously it worked. But going back to the start of that morning again was same thing. Arrived to the track, was like, bang. I was like, this is it. Let's get some chase runs in here. And I knew I could be better than everybody else on this track. You know, I knew that myself in a way. And my spotter, Kevin, was like, yeah, for sure. He was like, this track has you written all over it. So I was confident about that part, but I needed some practice just to get comfortable, you know, get in a better mindset and everything. Went out first practice lap, went to warm the tires up, car breaks down. And I was like, oh, lads, like, I was like, and then that was it. I was like starting to freak. Like, I was like, I'm just done now. Like, I was like, this weekend, missed all of battle practice, not one lap, never done a chase run. And I was like, I don't know what to expect now, because I was like, I can't be incredibly confident that it's easy, because I was like, it's a hard track, you know, there's some stuff you need to watch out for. Lucky enough, everything went to place. But yeah, I think from an outside point of reference, if you're scrolling through Instagram being like, oh, Conor won the championship, it was probably the most stressful weekend of my life. Like, it was probably the hardest weekend I've ever done in a car.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, had to stay in the mindset that I was good enough to win a championship.
I would love to be able to see a movie of the last 2 years made one day about your story. I think
we have some stuff even back further than that, which hopefully someday can be used.
I think it would be amazing to see just a singular line of story from, because you explained it so brilliantly. That's why I didn't want to interrupt you at all just then. And there are some bits I want to go back to to touch on, but I wanted you just to. You were explaining it so well. I was too invested. I wanted to relive all this as well. So, the feeling I'd like to hear from you, because obviously you had the car issues, and you said you didn't get any practice, right? Did you get any practice at all?
One lap with Jack on the Saturday.
So you got one lap with Jack.
Yeah.
And then when you're sitting there for your first qualifying run, like what is going through your head? Because I know you said I'm just gonna have to send it, but there's gonna be a few moments in that car where you're just obviously taking a breath, right? And you're just like, right, I'm going. We're about to go. You're watching the little light thing. Like, what is in that 30 seconds before you hit that go? Like, from the out of the tunnel in, what were you experiencing? Because for such a young man, the pressure that you have on you, and I'm not just pressure from yourself where you want to win, because who doesn't, right? If you're in competitive anything, you're there to win. No one's there just to take part, and if they are, it's normally quite apparent that they're only there to take part, right? You see the ones that could be champions, and you see the people that are really hungry for it.
Yeah, for sure.
So in your head, you've got that pressure on yourself. You want to be the best, but not just that. You obviously have very big sponsors that I assume want you to win as well. They're expecting it because they're giving you a lot of money. So they're like, well, we expect this guy to win. So you've got that pressure then on there as well. I'm just curious, Conor, because obviously I'm just a grassroots drifter that just loves to do a skid, right? So I never have the pressure of competition put on me. I never have the pressure of sponsors or financial backers or anything like that going, yo, you better perform, you know, like, and then obviously the pressure as well of the car that's been just such a nightmare vehicle for the season, right? Like, when it works, you win everything. When it doesn't work, it's the end of the world, right? So
yeah,
I just want to know what's going through your mind. What is that feeling like? Is it just serenity, just absolute solace? Like, I am in that mode, or is it noise and you know? Just let me know what you're feeling in that line. You know,
it's quite a strange one, and I think it's always quite a difficult one for everybody. Like, I've worked with drivers, still currently working with drivers that I've had to do like so many things to try to get them in a, you know, less nerves, you know, just try to enjoy it a little bit more. But yeah, that one was obviously quite hard. But you know, if I have a really good event, I have like a really good mental side to deal with this stuff, luckily. And I'm so lucky that it just comes quite naturally to me, because I've raced since I've been a kid. I know what competition has been like, you know, for 10 years now, probably. So it's like, that side normally comes quite easy. You know, I normally, if I have a good practice session, I would never doubt it, really. Of course, you'd be nervous, but I always say to myself, you know how to do it, so stop stressing about it, you know? Your body knows. It's like riding a bike. Your body knows, that's it. You know, you know, like, prime example, and I do different things what help this, of course. You know, I'll come back obviously to this run, but I just want to give you a bit of a know, of what way it works for me. But like, of course, I have different ways of dealing with this stuff, of trying to be in a better kind of mental state when you're competition driving. And I would always, it's quite a simple thing actually, would be my enduro bike. You know, I ride my enduro bike, having some fun in the off season with friends, and I would be like flat out wheeling through a trail, like hanging off the back of it. Probably shouldn't be, but I would always say to myself, like, if I came home from the day, and I would always be like, you know, I'm doing stuff there where I'm like, you do not think about it. Like, you do. There's not one stage on that bike where you're like, oh, I'll do this or I'll do that. It naturally just happens, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know. It's weird. It's just like your body knows what it's doing, you know? So I think anytime I get in the drift car, I always just believe that, stop stressing. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know what to do. You're not, you know, if you make a mistake, it is what it is. But I think that's kind of the biggest thing, is that you can overthink that. you know, but of course, coming back to that run, it's very different because I have the weight of the world on my shoulders. I have a whole nation behind me. I have like the list goes on, you know, I'm like sitting there like, and I think a big thing for me is I just try to keep it as normal as possible. Like speaking to Kevin as much as I can on the radio. Like I would literally be talking to Kevin until the lights come on the starting line. Like I would literally be make conversation until then, and he knows when to stop talking. But I think that just distracts me a little bit, or you know, it just gives me a little bit more kind of time to forget about it. And then when the car goes in gear, I don't even know what happens. You know, I would often do an unbelievable run, come back to the pits, and my dad or mom could be like, "Oh, how did you do that?" And I'm like, "Couldn't tell you. Don't know what happened." Like literally, with my mind will not remember any part of it really in the car.
Yeah.
Naturally, my body knows that, okay, this is where you go, this is how you do it, which is quite a strange feeling to feel. But I feel like if you have to think about everything so many times, that's when you start making mistakes. You know, like I've seen drivers firsthand, you know, I've tried to help drivers, I've tried to, you know, like I think Clint Van Oort, prime example. He's such a good driver. Like
unbelievable, yeah.
Unbelievable. I've drove practice cars with him, like, and I know that this guy is a naturally serious driver. But his mind upsets him so much sometimes. And we've spoke about this together. And, you know, Clint is an unbelievable friend of mine. And I think the last round in Poland, actually everything kind of came together for him. You know, everything
he did very well. Very well.
Such a good event. But I think that a good event was always in him, but sometimes he just kind of, you know, he obviously struggles a little bit, like to think about stuff and you know, nerves get at him and stuff. So I think that's like a prime example. So I hope everything has came together for him. But yeah, for me, it's like I'm quite lucky, you know, that I don't really think about it that much, and I just believe that it's fine. Like I just believe I can do it, and I just, you know, try to think about things. All it is the one that gets the thumbs up from the starting line. I just tell myself focus 1, 2, 3, and that's it.
Yeah,
I don't know what happens after that, but sometimes it works. Most of the time it works, so I won't change it, you know.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I think, like you said, with the enduro bike thing, because I want to touch on your outside hobbies later on. So, but it's I can kind of relate to that with like snowboarding. I'm at no level at all where I can be like, yeah, I'm brilliant at it. Like I'm a casual snowboard enjoyer, like I am with like I'd like to dabble in a bit of everything, but like when I'm snowboarding, you set off on the run, you drop into the run, and then you just kind of see what happens. I'm more of like a mountain freestyle guy, so I like to just kind of like find things to jump off of on the way down and spin around and, you know, like that sort of thing. And then when I get to the bottom, I'm like, fuck, I don't even know what just happened for the last 4 minutes, but that was fun. Like, and I can imagine it's almost like, so when I was lucky enough to drift with you in Mondello Park, and I got to chase you for a little while, which was absolutely amazing because you were in an absolute nails of a bag of an E36, and I'm there in my fully built S15, and I can barely keep up with you. I was like, man, this is something cool to watch. Like, as a fan of drifting, like I feel very lucky that I get to be able to call you lot my friends anyway. But like when you take that all away, I'm a fan of drifting anyway. So I'm sat there like looking sideways, and I'm like, wow, Conor Shanahan is literally right there. But then there was a moment when you were chasing me and I had a paid passenger from Drift Games in the car with me. And I said to them, like, because they'd shut the main track yet again because someone had crashed or whatever. So I was like, let's just go on the back track. Found you. And I said to this poor girl, I was like, that's Conor Shanahan, and he's now going to chase us. So if I was you, I'd film this, like, just on your phone, because, like, I trust him. So I know Conor trusts me, and I know that he will not put us in danger, but he will also scare the shit out of us if he gets the chance. So just, you know, there's a friendship here that is okay. He's, you know, we're on that level, and we were coming around the 180 at
the bottom,
And I remember looking at you, and you were on my door, so close I couldn't see your car and just your helmet. And this girl looked over, and I just saw the fear in her eyes, and I was just like, I just got to just don't fuck up. I was like, you know how to drift, just don't fuck up. Don't think that Conor's right there. Just don't fuck up here. Just drift so Conor can drift with you. And like, it was such a moment for me as well, man. And I wanted to say thank you again for letting me drive with you, because it was such a treat. Like, it's always been one of those things for me where I want to kind of be able to do that, you know. And it was a lot of fun, man. And like,
yeah, for sure, it's good. Like, I enjoyed that also. I think that's the best thing about drifting. And you touched on something really good there. I'm a fan of drifting as well. You know, I'm probably a bigger fan of drifting than anything. You know, I watch drivers, and I grew up watching Jack, of course, like drive, and I was always like, oh, I want to do that one day, or I want to do this, you know. So I think outside of being obviously now a Drift Masters champion, I'm a fan of everything what goes on, you know, doing stuff like that in a beat up E36.
Yeah.
Almost as much fun for me, if not more fun, because there's no stress. You just have fun with friends. And that's what drifting always should be about, you know, that there should be my side of it where it's my job and I go and try to win and try beat everybody. But there also has to be the side where, you know, you can go to a track with your friends and just enjoy driving cars. You know, that's what drifting is.
Yeah. Well, I've just picked that 350Z up, so I want you to get really, really close to that because I'm not going to be precious about this thing. So, like, I've simply purchased this car to be able to get a load of seat time in and also be able to leave it in Ireland or the S15, and it'll probably be the 350 while I rebuild the S15.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to just fly in and drive with you guys as much as possible because I feel like I probably learn more from that 6 to 8 laps we managed to get in.
Yeah, for sure. But it's the same for me. It's like people look at me driving a beat up E36 and they're like, what is this guy doing? And that's how I learn, you know. Like I go to all Neil's events, KD Custom events in Scotland. I'll be the first person on the plane.
Yeah.
And like they're grassroots drifting events, you know, of bash competitions, or now they do a winter battle series, which actually us as a brand, the Shanahans have got involved in as a partner and stuff. And I think like I go there and even drivers are like, what are you doing here? You know, what are you putting up? Like, you know, like, and I'm like, am I not allowed to drive here?
Yeah.
You know, but not in a bad way, but they feel that like, you know, because I think what's quite strange is that, so like for me thinking about how it works is that, let's say there's drivers there who are incredible drivers. Like I went to Scotland now with probably 4 years, 3-4 years. And I've seen drivers where I'm like, what? Like get this guy a bit of backing. Like I was like, this guy can drive, you know, but that's what they love doing. You know, they love being competitive and 328 BMWs, and you know, that's their level of drifting, which is amazing, you know, like, which is so good for drifting. But then I think if I go to an event, they're like, what are you doing here? You know, you're
one of the big dogs.
Yeah. You shouldn't drive at this level. But that's what is so good about drifting is that, like, you know, James Dean can go to Scotland and drive with a guy who's putting all of his money into an E36, all of his money into an E46. That's what drifting is about, is that like you get opportunities to do like that. But also it comes back to, I don't go there for no reason. So I don't go there because I get paid. I don't go there, like, it's nothing to do with that. I literally spend my own money to go there and have cars there. I go there because it's the key to being a successful driver. You know, laps, anything since I've been a kid, if I heard an engine of a quad revving outside the window of the house, and even if it wasn't mine, I would be gone out just to do one lap in it.
Yeah.
You know, I was always said, anything you can get your hands on, drive it. You know, drive it. Like laps in a car, using your feet, using your hands. That's how you become, you know, sharp at the top end of drifting.
Yeah, definitely, man. I tell you what, I really wanted to get involved as well with that Scotland series, but unfortunately for me, my real life has kicked back in now, and I've got to go over to China a lot this winter, which is fine. It's how I pay for my house and stuff. You know, my life is supported by that company, so I can't be like, I can't go drifting. But like, it's definitely on my list to like. I just think it'd be so much fun to come and enter a BMW competition, like an entry level grassroots, and then be up against you and James Dean, and be like, well, my first ever battle is going to be against Conor Shanahan. Like, it's what a cool story to be able to tell.
It is so good.
Anyone in the future, because none of us know where this sport's going to be. Like, if you'd have told me when I joined Drift Masters and we did that, because I joined in that season where it was 2 rounds in Austria, 2 rounds in Latvia, and that was it, right? If you'd have told me at that last event in Latvia, in 2 years we're going to fill a 55,000 seat stadium in Poland, I'd been like, how? I
probably wouldn't believe it either.
and it's happened within 2 years. So the team at Drift Masters now, I feel like a real solid management team that are just going to take this to the next level. And it may be one day where I try and explain it to my friends that maybe are into football who don't get drifting at all. They don't get cars. They're like, I just don't get it. And I'm like, right. They're like, why'd you go to Ireland so much? I'm like, well, imagine it this way. You go and decide to play 5-a-side football with your friends, or 6-a-side football, and then the guy that rocks up to be on your team as the +1 is Messi or Ronaldo.
Yeah.
And you get to practice with them.
Yeah.
I said, you'd go, right? If all you had to do was go to Ireland and you get to do that and you get to have a kick around with the best. And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, I get to do that
in my cars.
It's a good way of looking at it, actually. Yeah,
it's like a cool way to explain it to people that don't understand yet. It's a sport where the pros and the people that are the best at it are still viable to hang out with and talk to, and
yeah, absolutely.
You can approach you in the pits.
And I hope that never changes. Like I think the growth division of drifting right now is, as you said, is mind blowing even for me.
Yeah,
it's like I don't know where it's going to stop. I don't know what's going on, but like, yeah, I hope that never changes also, because I think that's what makes the sport so good, is that
so special. Yeah,
if a guy breaks down next to me, I have my whole team fixing his car.
Yeah, and normally they're one of the guys you've got to go and beat. I love. Do you know, that was one of my favorite things. Yeah, like
that's what it should be. And I've been involved in motorsport since I've been a kid, raced some different areas of motorsport, and like I would never like go back, or I would never try to become successful in something else, because I think it's like just a family, like even fans like family. It's like we're all in this. And I think what makes that happen is that, somebody would always ask me, being like, why is drifting like that? And I'm like, well, if I go to a track and I turn up and there's no James, there's no Jack, there's no Kavia, there's no name Zaleski, all the guys, all the drivers in Drift Masters, and I go there and there's 55,000 people there, and all of those guys aren't there, I may as well not have turned up. Because drifting is like, it's kind of a competition, but it's also like a WWE. So we're all on this like tour, and we're all in this trying to make money out of it, trying to make the sport as big as we can. And if anybody goes against that, or anybody becomes negative about that, doesn't want to speak to somebody, that will affect the whole growth of the motorsport, because we all need to push each other, to be better. We all need to push each other to have nicer cars, to have better looking teams, all this stuff. What will help the long term of the vision of making drifting, worldwide famous is what the goal is, probably.
Yeah, something obviously, because I run the Instagram for Drift Masters. For anybody that has tuned into the podcast because you're on here and don't know who I am, I run the Drift Masters social media basically when we're away, for like the stories and keeping people up to date with everything just online. And I obviously see all the negative comments that come in, and it drives me insane that I can't just tell these people, like, all right, I get it that you have a favorite driver, but just to understand, like, okay, let's say it's you versus Peter Wycheck, and you beat Peter Wycheck, and then all of a sudden it's Conor. I'm like, you do realize these lads are going to be drinking and partying together in 2 hours together, like they're friends, like everyone loves each other here. Yeah, and it's just like everyone always gets together after the event. You guys will, or your teams or whoever, will go and have a word with the judges to kind of understand results, or you get your moment with them, and then it's okay, cool.
That's it.
Let's go have a good time now. Let's
I think a lot of people, they put too much energy into it, because for me as a driver, if I lose, and I'll be honest, there is times where I'm like, don't agree. Like, and to tell a story, I'll bring a story back to Germany this year, and best probably event I've actually had all year. Had to win there, had to finish on the podium if I wanted to win this championship. And people are like, oh, you done all the hard work in Poland. I was like, no, I done all the hard work in Germany, because that was the only chance I had to get back into the fight, because it was a little bit of a stop-start year for me. And I came to Germany with one mindset: to win, like to absolutely blow everybody out of the water. And we agreed, Kevin, my team, I was like, I have to win here. I was like, if I want to win the championship. And of course, winning the championship was the only thing that was on the mind at that time of the year. I wanted it bad since last year. Got to the final and was like, this is it. I was like, I can pull a nice gap here, go to the final quite confidently. Went one more time with Peter, lost against Peter. Probably one of the best finals in Drift Masters history. Like,
it's incredible. Yeah. And I'm just going to say, Conor, I was watching it from the top of one of the cranes.
It was insane.
The best view ever. It was absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Like, even me and Peter were like, I was like, there is nothing left. I was like, we're both on the limit there. And that's such a good feeling in the car when you're like, that's it. There's nothing, And we sat there. First time I was like, I think I have this. I was like, I think I've won. Kevin, my spotter, was confident that we won. My whole team was. And then we go one more time, and I was like, cool, fair enough, like, it's fine. And then we do the one more time. The one more time was so close. Like, the second time was probably an actual one more time, in my opinion. And we get the result for the second one. And being honest, I was pissed off. Like I was like, I put so much energy into that battle to try to win this championship, And don't get me wrong, there are 3 humans in the judging tower, like, completely might have seen something. I hadn't watched it back yet, we went to the podium, and that was it. It was like a 30-second conversation. I just said to the judges, I was like, personally feel like I won. They gave their opinion. That was it. Conversation done.
Yep.
And then you go on to online, and everybody is
oh my God,
crazy. And I'm like, if I cared this much, it actually probably would be. Me and Peter are drinking outside the truck, laughing,
partying, yeah, dancing to everybody.
Like, and I think what like, it was probably the best final I've ever had, probably one of the best battles I've ever had. Was I annoyed? Yeah, of course I was, for probably an hour. And that was it. You know, I was like, it's fine, it's done. Because drifting, you can't go back. So I don't understand why people get annoyed about stuff, because it's not like they're going to get to the end of the event and John Paul from down the road has read a comment.
Yeah.
And then the judge is going to be like, oh, replay.
Yeah, replay. And my favorite thing is, obviously, because obviously, Kevin's Irish.
Yeah.
Oh, I think they just think the whole setup is Irish, because I try to explain this to people. Because obviously Ireland breeds a lot of drifting talent. It's just something that happens. There's certain countries will prioritize certain things more than others. You know, so in Ireland, in motorsport, like, you're very fortunate that Mondello Park loves drifting, like, because and they want to encourage it and have more in it, because there's so many racetracks in the UK that just don't. So that's why we have such a small selection of drivers from England. So it's, you know, and you've obviously got David, who is he from Czech Republic? I think he's from Czech, the David, the judge. I think he's Czech Republic, and then you've got Vern, who's from Holland, Netherlands. So there's 3 different nationalities there. So even if it was anti-Irish, it could be, because they could have the 2 non-Irish judges always voting against them. So I always try and explain it is as fair as it can get, and it's a judged motorsport, so it's always based on opinion. And not every decision is probably going to be right. I'm actually going to have Kevin on here one day. We need to arrange.
That's actually, very, very good. And I know Kevin all my life. I've grew up with Kevin. He's been judging drifting events since I've been like 13, 14 probably. Yeah. And like, you know, when I see stuff online, I'm like leave the guys alone. Like, you know,
and if they leave us, who are we then going to have?
Without them, exactly. Without them, we don't have an opportunity to drive. You know, so. Yeah, of course, sometimes drivers and sometimes, you know, sometimes everybody can be a little bit annoyed, and you're obviously going to be a little bit biased towards yourself. But I think, it's kind of funny when you look and like, I'm like, stop. We're all in this for a good reason.
I get it a little bit, right? I get from where they're coming, because and they're watching it on the telly, and it's a big, Drift Masters is a big deal now, and they'll have their favorites. And obviously a lot of people just support their national drivers, which is understandable when they're getting into it. And you always want someone from your own country to do well. Like when Max Cotton was competing, I wanted him to do well. He's an English boy. I want him to do well. You know, he's had the same life that I've had, basically. So you relate to it. But I always laugh a little bit when I see these comments, and I delete some of them now, and I even block some people, because I'm like, if you can't enjoy drifting at this level with what's going on, you're never going to enjoy it. Like, so I always find it funny though, because I think, like, right, let's just say that a Peter Vicek fan is saying F's and blinds about you. Do you think Peter is going to read that and be like, what a nice guy, I want to be friends with him? Do you know what I mean? Or if it was the opposite way around, if there was an Irish guy giving another one of the drivers shit, is Conor Shanahan going to read that and be like, do you know what? I'm going to follow this guy, this horrible human being that's being horrible about someone that I'm now going to go and party and drink with because I really like them. You know, like, it's just...
it's just sport. It's just general. Of course, it's never going to stop, but it is what it is. It's the joys of the sport getting more famous or whatever. But yeah, I do look at some stuff and I'm just like, you know, we all have entitled to our opinions, but just leave it off, you know. We're all in a good reason, you know. So the crazy thing is that that's what the conversation started on, is that, like, we're literally all friends, like, you know what it's like in a Drift Masters paddock. Like, minute the event is finished, like, it's just like, oh, what's up, lads?
I love it. I love the
where are we going?
Yeah, you know? I don't know if it's the same for you, obviously, because you've been involved in motorsport for a long time, but for me, it was Germany. I loved it the most because you had a party at your lorry, right? So, like, there was not really much of an after party there. So we kind of had the party at your lorry. So that you've got all of the race cars around, like the legit race cars that have been the stars of the show for the weekend as well. And then everyone's just, you know, casually hanging out near them. And I looked around, and I'm big on, like, absorbing a moment, trying to put every image of that moment in my head, so I can remember back and put myself back in that moment. And I remember I was by Dwayne's 180, and I was just like leaning up against it, and he was like, he come over to me and started giving me grief, like he always does, because I get on really well with Dwayne now. And he was like, "Don't be fucking putting a dent in my car." I just looked at it. This fucking thing's like, I was like, it's been in a comp series all year, Dwayne. Like, And it was just great, like, you know, hanging around with them and hanging around with everybody. And like, then you see like all the other drivers start gravitating in and their teams start gravitating in. And then all of a sudden you literally have all of the drivers, all of their teams relaxing because the event's over for a few weeks now. We can relax for a bit. And like I said, like
it's such an important part of it.
Yeah.
It's and like, don't get me wrong, there's also a part of it where, do you think I pull up to the starting line against Peter in the final and be like, oh, this is such a nice guy? Of course I did.
Of course not.
I pull up to the starting line and be like, I'm going to destroy him.
Yeah.
He had the same mindset. The minute we come over the finish line, we're laughing at each other, getting out. But that's what, you know, sport should be about, is that
definitely
and
leave it on the track.
And that's it. You know, it's done after that. And I think a lot of people don't think that it's like that. You know, they're like, oh, like I would often come home, you know, like to where I'm from. And like, where I'm from is like a very, like JA is a big sport in Ireland. So Gaelic football and hurling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So here is very, you know, driven by JA, you know, it's a club. But over the last like 2 years, they've really gotten into drifting. So they have like watch parties in the local pub now for every event. And everybody is into it now. Like literally, if I go down just for a pint with my friends or a game of pool, you know, I'm talking to some people or whatever. And I would often get asked, being like, oh, what's that Peter Vincent guy like, you know, proper or and I'm like, yeah, he's sound, he's a good guy, like. And they're like, yeah, like, oh, we thought different. And I'm like, nah, he's actually sound dude, you know. But it's actually crazy to see how much people look into that stuff to be like, I don't think they get on. Of course we get on, you know. But it's a crazy sport. It's like it's hard to explain unless you're really in the moment and really like understand.
You explained it really well.
Going on. Yeah,
you explained it really well with the WWE. It is a traveling. I see it almost, and I don't mean this disrespectfully. I love this sport, right, more than anything else in my life. I see it as almost like the traveling circus because we come to town. We bring all the noise, we bring all the colors, now we bring fireworks and all that sort of stuff. But we're bringing this motorsport
too, which makes it so much better. It's like,
it's so
competitive. It actually is crazy, you know.
It was so much fun as a bystander coming into the last round with, like, I think it was 5 drivers that could all walk away with the championship.
Yeah. Oh, it was crazy. Yeah.
And it's just
couldn't have been any better. Yeah.
You know, after the last 2 years of, let me just say it, pure dominance by Peter. Like the last 2 years, he's done amazingly well. It was fun to have a much more competitive
for sure
season. You know, he's probably going to come back next year with, I assume, the new cars. So we'll have to see how he gets on with that. And what is your plans for next year? I was going to leave this question till later, but while we're talking about drifting, like what's the future hold for Conor Shanahan?
Not so much I can speak about right now, to be honest. Yeah, I want to go back and do Drift Masters again. I really would like to go on a curve and try stay as competitive as I can and try win another championship. Which isn't easy because it's such a competitive championship. But yeah, for Conor Shanahan and the company side of things, there's lots, you know, it's crazy. And to be honest, like I've been kind of back working since the start of this week, and like I think the vision of what drifting is right now, even for me as a driver, you know, in the thick of it, is like it's mind blowing, to be honest. It's like so much stuff is changing. A lot of people are getting interested in it, and you know, that's what's quite amazing for me. So of course there's lots. I have some crazy plans. What are long-term plans? They're not going to happen overnight, but yeah, I think we're in a good position to make progress and make, like, you know, good moves and do lots of different things. For me, the biggest thing right now is the biggest probably business plan for me next year is that our YouTube is going to come back.
Perfect.
So I'm finally going to employ a videographer full time who's hopefully going to live with us and do proper content. And we also have something else what maybe we're going to start working on, which is crazy if it does happen. Okay. So there's lots going on outside of competition driving also, which is quite nice. But you know, and touching on that, you know, you understand this as well. I think it's probably a cool conversation. Is that I get asked loads why aren't you still doing the YouTube? Like, you know, why don't you have merch ranges? And I'm like, I would love to do all that stuff. But you know, to give you a little bit of insight into our company, it's a professional race team who've just won a championship at the top level of drifting. But the only 2 people employed, let's say actually employed in the company, are me and Jack.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like Jack runs the garage, fixes all the cars, does everything, builds the best drift cars what I have ever driven. And my side of the company is finance, marketing, you know, emails, meetings. So when you're trying to win, you know, that's the main focus, and you're trying to do a good job at it, and you're trying to have the best team. It's impossible to do all that stuff. But I feel like I've always said the last 2 years, for me, even on a driver scale, has been like a jigsaw puzzle. And I always said to myself, when this side of the jigsaw puzzle comes together, for sure I can win a championship, which has happened I hope it happened last year, but it didn't. But it happened this year. So for me to like be like, I said to myself like 4 years ago that when this puzzle comes together, I knew I could win the championship, and it happened, which is like, that's pretty crazy. But now that side of the puzzle is done. We know how to have the best team, have, really good cars, and it's nowhere near finished. I want to have the best team in Drift Masters. I want to have the best truck in Drift Masters. I want to come back next year with bigger, and everybody's like, holy shit, these guys really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's the plan on that side. But the rest of the jigsaw is kind of like more like outside. Of course, I want somebody who can live with me and we can do content like 2 videos a week, because me and Jack do fun stuff. We do, stuff while probably people are like, Jesus, that's a bit mad, but that's the way we live. We live mad. My family is mad, to be honest. My dad is probably outside right now flipping a car in a forklift or something. There is so much stuff in my house where I'm like, oh, this really needs to be shown, all the time. So I really want to employ somebody full time to take over the YouTube, have like a proper merchandise and sell everything. That's kind of my main focus right now, to fix that side. And of course, go back and let's see, Jack still needs to win a championship. I know that day is coming for sure. He's probably like my biggest competitor.
It's very difficult as well, as a friend of both of you. As a friend of both of you.
It's when one of you brothers also, man.
But when one goes wrong for one of you, normally the other one is really winning.
Yeah.
So it's like one of these like torn things. It was like in end of Germany, and Jack was so down, and I was just like, man, like I was like, yeah, but you're Jack Shanahan, dude. Like it's I know it's hard,
I think that's the hardest thing, that's always been the hardest thing. And I think like Jack for me has been the driver, coming back to a fan of drifting, he's been the driver. If somebody asked me right now, who's your favorite driver to watch in drifting, I would say Jack. And it's nothing to do with him being my brother, like nothing at all to do with my brother. It's,
if anybody wants to know why, I think I can just literally tell one video people can go watch and see why. Like, because Jack's one of my favorite drivers as well. Just absolutely. When I just watch, when Jack Shanahan is being Jack Shanahan and is at the top of his game, look at when he won Latvia this year.
Yeah. He's
how he enters his car behind people.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, for me, let's say, even going back way past that point, when I grew up watching drifting, I always will say that I learned probably more from Jack's mistakes than my own mistakes, because I observed everything a lot when I was a kid. Like, I was running around the place in a scooter giving everybody cheek, but I actually was watching what was going on. And I think that's quite cool for me to know that, like, we both drive so different. It's crazy. Like, we both literally drive complete opposite. In practice cars, probably not. We drive probably quite similar because we're wild. That's just the way we are, even if we're in the field messing in cars. Like, we just love wrecking stuff. But I think as a competition driver, we drive our driving is very different, So, but for me, like, coming back to that point is that, like, I've seen that guy do stuff in a car where I'm like, I'm like, what the, like, how does that even make sense? Like, remember his qualifying run last year in Mondello, first round,
100 points,
99, first time
99.
Of on Valinos, and I was struggling big time. Like, I was like really struggling with the tire, and I remember I was in the car. I think I was just after doing my run, and I was going back watching it on the live stream, and I was watching it, and I was like, is it just because I'm barely concentrating, or was that absolutely mad? And then I got back to the garage, and my team were watching it on the big screen. I jumped out of the car to watch the replay, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, that is nuts, but he's always that driver as a fan, if you stand on the, side of the fence, or you're sitting in a grandstand, your first time watching drifting, he will always have that effect where you're like, fucking hell, that's mad, like he's a nut job, that's just the way he drives. But I think it's maybe cost him sometimes, that style of driving. He will never change it, because Jack passionately loves drifting. He loves the technique of drifting. He loves, the different driving styles. And I think he's tried to change it a little bit, to tame a little bit, and, do stuff a little bit different. Like, when I drive at a competition driver, I'm probably actually the most boring driver in the championship to watch.
I definitely wouldn't say that.
No, but like, as a, let's say, terms of, a rule book, like, for me, okay, my chase runs are exciting on stadium tracks, and I can really, know how to win by pushing and being aggressive. But when it comes to lead lap, I will never overdo it. I will just do it. I will literally sit in briefing, be like, this, that's it. I will never risk the car. I will never, I will always just do enough to win, and quite something funny at that actually is that when I was young, James Dean's father said to me one day, he was like, and this stuck with me right until now, to even winning a championship at the top level of drifting. When I was driving Pro-Am at the time, he said to me, he was like, when you're driving a Pro-Am championship, he was like, you don't need to drive at 100%, he was like, you just need to drive to do enough and push them over the finish line, and I was like, yeah, and it worked, I won a Pro-Am championship from listening to that information. But he always told me, and he always said, the only way you're guaranteed to lose in drifting is if you score a 10-0. And I never really kind of like understood it. I was like, oh, whatever, it is what it is. What do you mean? Like, and he was like, well, if you just do enough, even if you do enough for one more time, you're still in the fight. Whereas if you go out and you throw it away, that's it. You don't have a recovery from that. You can't, he was like, you might get it one more time because somebody might match that because it might not be enough, but then it's not enough. So then you need to go that extra little bit, So I think my driving style is a little bit like on the play it safe side, but also doing enough. Whereas Jack's is like madness. Like, I'm like,
balls to the wall.
He does a top 32 battle lead run, and I'm like, you literally just nearly thrown the event away. And he's like, oh, sure. Yeah, it is what it is. Like, I'm like, but it's cool to see that side is very different. But yeah, like, we've tried to make this as big as we can, and we both have very different sides of the company. He has nothing to do with the financial side. He has nothing to do with the company sides. And I quite enjoy that work. To be honest, if I wasn't driving a car, that's probably what I would have ended up doing, was marketing or something. And so I think it works quite good, but it's also like incredibly busy, like right now. And I hope we're now in the position where we can employ people full time and stuff, which is quite cool, and start looking at those options. So yeah, I think it's quite a nice relationship what we have, and hopefully it stays that way, because it's important that we both work for the good of each other and keep pushing each other. But yeah, coming back to that point, what you touched on, what we started on, is that like that's what's hard, like Jack comes in and throws the ties out of the pram, or I throw the ties out of the pram, vice versa, like pissed off that we're after losing. And it's very hard for the other driver to you feel it for the other person also as well, but you also are doing it for the good of your will as well. So it's important to be like, it is what it is, and I think that brings a little bit of enjoyment to the team. If one person does shit and the other person does good, it's quite nice. But for us as brothers, it can be quite difficult. It can be, if he's freaking out or if I'm freaking out, it's like, whatever, dude. Like, I also need to try win this event. We'll talk later. It's like, it's nice to try just find that balance. And I think we do it quite good, because we just don't really speak to each other when stuff goes wrong until later on. We'll touch it on the way back to the airport or whatever it is. But yeah, that side of the thing is it's quite intense sometimes, but it's also lucky that we get to be brothers and drive at the top level. Fighting each other is quite incredible,
I think they kind of touched on it actually on the live stream. Well, they didn't. Jack did. When he went out to Ite Sedia in Germany, and they come up and spoke to him, didn't they? And he was like, well, it happens. I've just now got to make sure that Conor wins. That was make sure Conor's...
That's what's crazy. Like, coming back to the story of when the engine blew, I actually was meant to say this when I was telling the story. It's like, we were at the track and the guys were ripping the engine out, and this is like 1 a.m.
This is in Poland.
It's in Poland. Back to the story of when the engine blew. And I literally had to drag Jack from out underneath the car to be like, man, go back to the hotel and go to sleep. It's like, it's like it's his job to make sure I win as well, as an older brother and as a guy who's done my cars for years. And like I always said, and no matter where I drive, I've had options to drive, and we're looking at things for next year. I can't speak too much about it, but no matter where I go or no matter what I want to do, if a guy offered me £1 million to drive somebody else's car, I would be like, no, like, I want to drive the car what I'm used to, and I want to get my brother to build it, because that's kind of always, for me, is why we drive very differently also, is that I trust the process of everything. Like, I don't overthink too much. If I hear a noise in the gearbox, I'm like, whatever, just tell the guys and get out and walk away. If Jack hears a noise in the gearbox, he'll strip the gearbox 6 times to make sure, because he's so paranoid about car, But
we saw that in Sweden last year, was it? The gearbox was out of the car 4 or 5 times, and I was like,
I would drive until the thing is wrecked. Like, it doesn't make a difference to me, because my opinion is, if it's going to break, it's going to break anyway. Whereas as Jack, as the car builder, it can be quite difficult sometimes for him to tell the guys. He rather like do it himself and know that it's perfect, because he overthinks the mechanical side a little bit too much and worries about it. Whereas I just come in, I just trust that the guys know what they need to do. We have good guys. And I always tell Jack this. I'm like, Jack, get out of the car, go into the aircon and sit there until your next run. Like, what do you, don't be out there, arguing with the guys about this. Just trust that they know what they're doing, So it's quite funny to watch, but he's so switched on with like gearing and mechanical. So like, I'm actually so lucky because like for me, I have very good understanding of a car, but sometimes I can struggle maybe to put it into like exact words of what I want. And the fact that we drive exactly the same car is that like he can come in and be like, yeah, do this. And I'm like, okay. And I do it and it's perfect. That's what's like Jack had my car set up for the qualifying run in Poland without even me doing a practice lap. He had my gearing perfect, all from his car. So he would do a run, come in and be like, guys, you need to do this to Conor's car to make sure it's perfect. So I was on that starting line of the qualifying run, not thinking, oh, is my gearing perfect or is my setup perfect? Is the tire pressure okay? I just trusted, oh yeah, Jack has it done, so it's fine. So I think he plays a very heavy part of worrying that I need to be perfect also, which I think, to be honest, being honest, probably maybe has an effect on his own side of driving also, maybe, I don't know.
Interesting. That is really cool to hear though. And obviously, like I've said, I've been able to like witness you and Jack's growth over the last how old are you now?
20 now.
You're 27 years. Over 7 years I've known you now. So it's been 7 years of watching both of yours careers, because Jack's always been top boy to me. Like, he's always been, both of you and your parents have always just been the best. Always feel welcome. You always make sure I've got food in my belly as well. We're out walking around Driftmaster. Like, no one goes without when the Shanahans are there. It's
no, for sure.
It's amazing. Like, literally, I was come over. This is I think you were on the phone to your granddad after you won. And I'd come over and I didn't want to do any more stories or anything like that. I felt like I'd done a perfect end to it. So I was like, I don't want to bother Conor. I want you just to have your moment. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I'm well done, man. Because you were over on the phone to your granddad, I think. Am I right saying it was granddad?
My granddad,
so you were talking to your granddad and your mum come out with a bucket of KFC chicken. She was like, "Do you want some chicken?" I was like, "Do you know what, Val? Yeah, I really do." I was like, "I'll have a bit of chicken," it's just have a burger as well. For goodness sake, make sure you're eating. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because when you're running around at these events, like my job is literally from the second we arrive to the second we end, which can sometimes be fucking like 18-hour days. It's a lot of fun. Like, I'm very proud of what I do. I like doing it the best I can, not just to make sure the social media looks great, but all of you lot are happy with it. You lot get your extra little bits for whatever you guys might need for sponsors and that. And your family and your team are always just awesome. Just to
no, for sure. I agree. We're quite lucky, to be honest, to have the best parents ever. So it's quite nice.
They've been great. I wanna stop talking about Drift Masters now, and I wanna find out, how did this all begin for you? You've been saying that you raced a few other disciplines first. What was the first things that you actually got competitive in?
Yeah, so our background was kind of like autograss. Did you ever hear of autograss? So that's what
I know a little bit about it. I've never tried it.
Dirt oval racing. We still actually have some cars. We had an event last weekend, what we're a part of, a local club here. So we still play a little bit part in it. That's kind of where the background probably started. Like, so my mom used to race also. So my mom was a national champion in class 9 in autograss, which is like a pretty big deal. I think there's only 2 women from Ireland to ever win a national. Amazing. So it was bred into me from every side. But yeah, I think I grew up around cars, like I grew up literally from going to the racetrack from when I've been like probably not even a year old. I was brought up always around cars. So we would have traveled watching mom and dad race up until we were probably like 7, 8. My first competition started racing in stock cars, like oval racing stock cars, when I was 7 was my first race.
Wow, 7-year-old, your first taste of competition. That is insane.
So I started then. I didn't constantly go from then. The story is actually quite funny, but yeah, going back. So mom and dad used to race. Mom stopped racing. Dad still used to race a little bit. Then we changed to stock cars, and we all kind of grew up racing that until 9, 10, in around that age. And then I went racing karts. I always wanted to go racing karts. I didn't do much of it, to be honest. I actually wasn't a fan when I got involved in it. I wasn't as much as a fan as I thought I was. But I think for me growing up, it was kind of like I wasn't really sure, to be honest, like what I wanted to do. I played a lot of soccer. I played like county level soccer in Ireland, and played some tournaments and stuff like that. just kind of, growing up, finding out different stuff. I was massive into sport. I used to love like sport. It was like always had like a football in my hand, or always had a hurley in my hand. So then Jack kind of got involved, probably where my career, like, let's say, started. Jack got involved in drifting when he was like 12.
Yep. I think it was something like that, because we spoke about that when I had him on here. We spoke quite in depth about that as well. It's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah, so I was like 8 at the time, like 8, 9. So Jack was drifting for like a year. And I remember one day, I was 9 actually, there's a video on YouTube of when I first ever slid a car. And often
what car was it? What was the first car you did a drift in?
An S14 M3. Yeah, so I went to we had this low like track like an hour away from our house where I actually learned how to drift afterwards. But yeah, we used to go there for some testing. It's just like an oval track. And I remember Jack and James were there at this track this day. And people always say to me like, "Oh, you've been drifting since you're 9." And I actually haven't. I slid a car first when I was 9. And my dad was like to me, he was like, "Oh, do you want to give it a go?" And I was like, "Oh, no, not really. I'm not really pushed." Because I honestly was a kid who was just unknown, didn't understand drifting.
Yeah, of course.
Just thought it was a waste of time, really, to be honest, like when I was a kid.
I mean, I thought that up until I was like 25, dude, and then I got bit hard by the bug. So
yeah, I mean, and I think when Jack started to when I understood the competition side of drifting, when Jack was driving, that's when I was like, fuck. I was like, this is madness. And I think I'll touch on that in a second. But so basically, my dad was like, "Do you want to give it a go?" And I was like, "No." And Jack and James were like, "Go on." They were like, "You may as well give it a go." And I was like, "Okay." So they put like a booster seat in the car. And I remember I couldn't pull the handbrake. And James Dean's spotter, kind of manager, Michael Sheen, who works for him full time now. Do you know Michael?
Yeah. No, Mike.
So Michael was with James back then as well. And Michael actually sat in the car with me and pulled the handbrake for me. So I pressed the clutch and he'd pull the handbrake, and I started sliding, could slide the corner, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, that's mad." And I just thought like, "Oh, it's normal, it's fine, like whatever." So I done that day. And then my dad was kind of like, "Oh, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to build a car?" And I kind of was like, "No." I was like, I'm not pushed a while. So I was from then to probably 11, 12, I was flat out playing soccer, back in sport. And I remember I was probably 10, I think. I went to an event in Poland, actually right next to where I won my first Drift Masters event. It was Jack's first European Drift All-Stars event. And I went there, and there was a skate park behind the track. And I went to this shop with my dad to get messages for the race truck. And I was like, "Oh, can I please get a scooter?" And he was like, "No." Like, he was like, "You're not getting a scooter." So I finally convinced him to get a scooter. And James was at the event spotting for Jack at the time. Got a scooter. I didn't see them for like the first 2 days. I was literally just in the skate park. And my mom and dad at that stage were kind of like, "What is wrong with this guy? Like, why doesn't he really love drifting?"
Yeah.
And it was not that I didn't love drifting, but I always loved doing stuff myself. Like when I was a kid, man, like I used to come into the house like battered and bruised every day because I was just always doing something. Always had to mess on something. I had crazy carts. I was just always at something. And I remember my mom said to me, I was like, "Oh, I'm going back to the skate park." And the top 32 was about to start. And my mom was like, "No, like, come on, you need to watch the event." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So I went up to the grandstand. James was spotting for Jack, and we were sitting next to each other. And I watched the first battle the whole way to the final. And I remember I was young that time. And I remember I walked out of that like grandstand and I said to myself, "This is what I want to do."
Yeah.
And I was like, I really, really like enjoyed that. And I was proud of Jack. And I was like, it's amazing. I was like, it was the first time for me that I kind of grew up a little bit and it clicked, and I was running around events for a long time before that even.
Yeah.
But it was the first time where I was like, this is what I want to do. And I remember I got home and me and my dad were talking about it. So kind of was like a year on from then. Jack drove, I think he won, or he done a full European Championship that year, and he finished like in the top 5 with an SR 180. And obviously we knew that he was a very good driver. And what's crazy about this story is that as this was going on and Jack was making like a lot of progress, like business was really difficult for my dad at the time. Like my dad was a very wealthy man back, at that time, but unfortunately lost a lot of stuff when like recession hit in Ireland. And but anyway, that's besides the point. So like I kind of understood that a little bit from the outside, even though I was young, and I knew what money was being spent, and I was like, fuck, I don't know if I want to put them under pressure to do this. And so like a year on from then, dad was like, "Fuck it." He was like, "We'll build a car." We do everything at home in a way. Like my dad is gifted with his hands and Jack, so it's not like we have to pay a company to make a car. So my dad is like, "Okay, we'll build something. And I didn't really know at the time. I was like, I don't mind, whatever. I was like, why not? So they started an M3 Compact, which I actually bought the car back this year.
Did you really?
Yeah, I bought it back. So they started to build it, and they were obviously focusing on Jack, and Jack needed some upgrades and stuff at the time. So I was kind of like, it was probably like, I think I was like 12 by the time I actually drove that car. But while this was going on, finally convinced my dad to buy me a simulator. Like, I wanted a simulator since I was like 9, but my dad just did not believe in it. Like, he was like, it's a waste of time. So I got a simulator when I was like 10. And I was playing the simulator all the time. Like, I mean, like, it was crazy. I was playing the simulator until like 3, 4 a.m. in the morning.
Really? And
Like,
what, were you drifting on the sim, or were you doing grip racing?
Yeah, drifting. And I had a good bunch of friends on the simulator that time. And there was loads of us playing. Like, so it's crazy. Like, I've been playing the simulator now like 10 years. Like, and you know, and it's 100% the biggest key of why I'm the driver I am. Like,
That's so funny you say that, because I had Kevin Piscotty on the episode previous to this.
I spoke to him in person about this actually, and I asked him straight out. I said, "How have you got so good?" Yep. And he said to me, he said, because he said, I took a similar path to what you done. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, I'm playing the simulator shitloads, you know. But so then I got the simulator, was playing it. Nobody was really taking any notice. Jack used to play it every now and again, but Jack knew that I was really good on the simulator. Like, he was like, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Learned how to left foot brake, all these things.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So my dad built this car, and he was like, we're going to go to Watergrass Hill, which is my local track, and we're going to do an event. And I was like, what? I was like, I've never competed in my life. Like, I was like, what do you mean we're going to do an event? And he was like, oh, there's an amateur event on there this weekend. And I was like, yeah, cool. I was like, why not? So I went there. I was probably just turned 12 at this stage. Jumped in the car, could drift the car, no problem. Like, linked the whole track. And my dad was like, what? Like I remember I came in the first time. And of course, me, like, proud little kid, I was like, what do you think of that? Like, and it was such a cool car as well. And my dad was like, fuck me. He was like, I did not expect that the simulator was that good. Like, he couldn't believe it. Like,
so did you go home and find John on the old sim? Was he there in your seat?
It's funny. I done that event, ended up winning the event, like my first ever event. What I done, I ended up winning it. And like, everyone was like, what? Like, they were like, that's
how old are you at this point? Sorry.
12, just turned 12. I think.
Just turned 12. Wow.
Yeah, numbers could be a bit wrong there, but I think just turned 12,
roughly
around that. So then I got home, and a funny story, actually, got home from that week, and my dad was like, do you want a new simulator? Like, he was all in, like. And Alan Hines used to be big in the simulator at the time, and he had like this like good steering wheel. My dad was calling Kieran, being like, oh, what's the name of the simulator Alan has? I need to buy Conor a new one. And
brilliant.
so I was on the simulator like every day since then, and I was doing some events. I done like that championship in that compact. I ended up winning the championship, and then I really loved that car. Like, I was like, oh, I love this car. I wanted to stay driving it. And then one day I came home from school and the car was sold. And I went mad. Like, I went mad at my dad. I was like, what are you doing selling that car? But my dad was building a customer's car at the time, a good friend of ours, Gary Sweeney, which was the 180, what I first brought, what you'd got a passenger spinning.
Yeah.
So my dad and Jack were building this with Gary, as they were friends, but my dad and Jack were building it for him. And it was a 1J, like 350Z gearbox, like decent car, Wise Fab on the front. And but the car was finished, and Gary just had bought a business, and he wanted to focus on that business, so he didn't really want to carry on with the car. And I was seeing this car every day because, like, it was in our garage being built, and it was a really cool car. So Gary was like to my dad, look, do you want to buy it off me? He was like, I really need to focus on the business for a couple of years and get it going, you know. And he's now has a really successful business as well. So my dad was like, yeah, sure, it's a good car for Conor, you know, to get him up like to a proper car. And so the sold to BMW, was going mad. I was like, fuck's sake. I was like, why did you sell that car? Like, and then one day I came home from school, went up to the garage, and I went in the door. Jack was in there doing something, and he was like, oh, go over and look at Gary's car, the body kit's on it, it's finished. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. So I went over, and then there was an Irish flag on the door, on the window, with Conor Shanahan.
And
I
love that.
Like, I was like, no way. So I was still annoyed that the BMW was sold. Like, still was annoyed. And I went down to my dad. My dad was in the kitchen, and I was like, okay, I can't give out to you anymore. And he was like, I think that was actually like a Friday. And he was like, oh, we're going up the north. we're going to bring the car so you can test it. They were actually going up to the guy who bought the BMW,
okay.
you know, to do some lessons with him and stuff. So I was like, yeah, fine. Went up, first lap ever driving this car, broke 2 GTR half shafts, like at the same time. So wrecked the half shafts, didn't have any spare ones, so I couldn't drive it. And I was just watching my old car go around lap after lap, and I was like, oh, like I just want this car back.
Yeah.
So got back home and done some changes to the car, and then there was a Watergrass Hill event on same championship what I won in the compact, but the pro class was on the next weekend, and Dad was like, oh, we'll do that in that car, and I was like, yeah, cool. So they fixed everything, got everything perfect, went to that event, and I ended up winning it in the rain, and the car was so good, like it was sick, like it sounded unbelievable.
Yeah.
1J, it was like 400 brake horsepower. And then I done that year in the car, like amateur events, and I was too young to compete in IDC, so I could never compete in IDC until the following year. So then Dad was like, okay, we'll give it a proper go. And I was like, all right. So then one day I came home from school and the 180 was on 4-axis stand, stripped to nothing. Like, and I was like,
what is going on now?
And my dad was like, oh, we're rebuilding the car. Like Samsonite dog box, 2J, full Weiss fab. And
at this point, do you understand when you're that age, like, holy shit, this is going to be a fucking real serious thing now?
Because I obviously watched him building Jack's car all the time. And so I was like, okay, whatever. And Jack was building a new car at the time as well, actually, or upgrading his S14, what he had. So they just finished Jack's car, which was an M3 Turbo S14, like 800 brake horsepower. It was like such a sick car. And the plan was for us to both do IDC and BDC the following year. So Dad was like, okay, he was like, we'll finish the car, whatever. So then the next year came and the car was finished. Had a 2J, all the bells and whistles, and went to do the first round. But I actually was too young to do the first round of BDC, and I missed the first 2 rounds of IDC, I think, because I was too young. So I got 4 rounds of BDC in that year, and I had 4 back-to-back podiums in Pro-Am. Like, the thing was unreal. Like, I was like, got to pro every day in it. But that year, when we built Jack's new car, the engine blew the first event, and we couldn't afford to put a new engine in it. So we shared the 180 for the season. So I was driving it on the Saturday, he was driving it on the Sunday. Following year came, and then it was like, okay, we'll give the Pro-Am championship now. So I finished second in the BDC championship behind Danny Grundy because I missed the first round. And then the second year came, and Dad was like, okay, we'll give it a proper go now. He was like, we'll do full championship, IDC and BDC. And I ended up winning both. And I ended up winning both. Next year came, which was the jump to pro. So this is all in like 4 years, which is like madness. Like I went to Europe in 2018, and I was drifting probably 4 years, didn't it? Like, which is quite mad.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, then I went to pro, and I ended up finishing second in the BDC Pro Championship. And
who pipped you to that? Who won?
I think Matt Carter won it that year.
Okay.
Yeah, Matt Carter.
Big name in UK drifting.
Yeah, Jack was third, I think. And then I finished third in the Pro Championship in Ireland. And how I ended up going to Drift Masters is quite a funny story. So this is like in the 2017, like top driver in Pro National Championships, and car was good. So then Dad was like, so Jack was decided to go back to Drift Masters, to go to Europe in 2018. We had that decision made even in 2017, because he got a sponsorship from a tire company. And so Dad was like, look, we'll do a Pro IDC and BDC championship again next year. And I was like, yeah, cool. I was like, I'm happy with that. So then, like 4 weeks before the season started, I actually done the NEC show in January.
Okay.
The Auto Sports show. I done the live show with James at that. And, like James was like to me, he was like, fuck me. He was like, your driving has came on like so much, chase runs. And I was like 14 at the time. And Dad, 4 weeks before Drift Masters, we were leaving. He was like, I wonder would Drift Masters give you an entry? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, and it made sense what he said, because he wanted to do a full IDC and BDC championship with me and a Drift Masters championship with Jack. And, we were quite lucky that my dad had like a really good structure. Like my dad always wanted us to become successful, in motorsport. And the funny part of the story is my dad absolutely hated drifting. Like
I remember Jack told us the whole story. Yeah.
Like, So it's quite funny, but then he got so invested in this journey, like, and like the passion, but my dad had to win. Like, if, like, when I was a kid, when I was racing, if I didn't win, my dad would barely speak to me. That was the way it was. You know, my dad invested, he didn't mind investing. He wouldn't change anything for the world, but we had to respect winning. You know, winning was what was important.
You had to take it seriously. If your dad's putting this much money in.
Now, even now, like, my dad steps back and still involved in the team. But even now, if we don't win, like, and he has nothing to do with it, you know, we're sponsored and everything. But even now, he's still pissed off. Like, you know, he's just that type of person. So anyway, going back to the story, we're 4 weeks out from Drift Masters. He was like, I wonder, will you get an entry? And I was like, yeah. So Jack called Eric from Drift Masters, being like, my brother wants to come. And Eric's like, yeah, cool. He was like, bring him. So my dad's logic behind the story was that it would have ended up costing him more for me to do an IDC and BDC championship than do Europe, because the truck was going anyway. So it was just a kid putting a trailer on the truck. And I was sitting there being like, this is madness. Like, what's going on here? And like, people at that time were like, they couldn't understand like how I progressed. Like, I think there was like a space of like 2 years there when I was driving Pro-Am and Pro. Like, every weekend I podiumed. Like, I was on a like consistent podium rate until I first went to Drift Masters, and I was putting so much work in on the simulator, like driving the Plock track, which was 2018. You've probably seen the video of where I beat James.
I watched it live, man. I remember I was so 2018. Just to put you in a picture of where I was in between selling my first house and buying the one I'm in now. And this is a new build, so it wasn't ready for 8 months. So I had to move into a shed in my mum and dad's garden, and the only thing I could watch was my phone because there was no internet down there. And then I was like, oh, I remember because I'd followed James. Like, I got into drifting in 2016, so I saw James and Jack. They were like the first battle I saw at Global Warfare. And then obviously I was like, oh, I'll just tune in, and I'd met you already, so I you know, become a little bit pally with you, and I was like, to me, the Irish have always been the boys. Do you know what I mean? Like, I look at you guys as like the freaking big Donnies, but you're the guys that I get to hang out with anyway. So it's just like, I was like, oh, I know that's just Drift Masters things. I didn't really know much about the championship itself. But I was like, I knew you and James and Jack and all that were in it. I was like, oh, I'll put it on because I've got nothing else to do. I can't watch telly or Netflix or really anything, so I'll just watch it on my phone. So I was in a shed in my mum and dad's garden when I was watching this unfold. So
yeah, it was. So we went to that event, and to give you a reference from my side of it, like, I'm thinking like, what's going on? And we actually, quite cool, we traveled to that event with James. Like, so I went in the truck with my dad. So I drove from Ireland to Poland with my dad in the truck, and James was on the same boat as us. And like, I remember even on the boat, like, my dad was taking the piss out of me, and he was like, oh, James is going to wipe you here. And, no, we were just having a bit of banter, going back and forward. Like, and my dad was like, you're going to get your eyes opened here, you know, like, taking the piss out of me. And then we went to that event, and it comes back to stadium tracks again. You know, I love that style track. I've always loved that style track, where you can really be aggressive on the door and like go for mad chase runs. So I remember we unloaded, and Jack was actually doing his leaving cert exams at the time in school. So he missed the first practice day, and him and my mom flew out afterwards.
Okay.
But Jack didn't get a whole pile of practice. But like, if there was bookies on this, if there was like odds on this event, I was like you would have probably made millions off me if there was odds. Because like nobody, you know, everyone knew Jack there. They obviously knew that I was his younger brother and I was winning stuff at home, but I wasn't in drifting long enough to be like, oh, this guy's a shark, you know, I didn't think that also. So
Jack was going to ask, sorry to interrupt. I was going to ask, when your dad's giving you all like the banter, because I know it's very fun. I know it's like I've been around. I know there's a whole lot of like you pick at each other because you know you're all really close. You know, it was like, for instance, you and Jack in the stadium in Poland arguing over that scooter was one of the funniest things for me to watch, because like I'm looking at you two like you're about to have the biggest weekend of both your lives, and he's giving you grief about not taking the scooter out. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that whole thing. So, sure. Were you thinking when your dad's giving you that grief, like, all right, watch me? Or were you just thinking, no, he's probably right?
To be honest, because I was so unknown to what it was.
Yeah.
But I remember I went there, and it kind of changed quite fast, actually, because I'd done my first practice lap, and I was like, oh, this track is sick. And I never drove on a track like it in my life. And I was quite worried, like so many walls. And I remember James, I was in a different practice group to James, and James watched the first practice group. And I remember James came up to my dad being like, fuck. He was like, that's impressive. And my dad didn't tell me anything. Like, my dad kept pushing me, and then I think my dad kind of went off the wave then of like, fuck, he's like actually as good as we thought, or he's better. Like, you know, and my dad was really pushing me that weekend. You know, he was like, you know, in practice, he was telling me like, yeah, he was like, but you can still push. Like, you know, he wasn't giving me any like hope. You know, he was just trying to keep me humble in the experience. And the event came and qualifying came. I think I qualified third, and that was like, I was like, this is the best night of my life. Like, I was like, it's amazing. So then the next day came, done some chase runs in practice, and everybody was talking about my chase runs. Even drivers were like, what the, like, and it was completely from the simulator. Like, you know, it was the first time I actually properly, aggressively, you know, chased in real life. And the event just unfolded. Like, I can't barely remember the event, to be honest, but it's still probably, of course, the championship was the most special night of my life. But to be honest, this win was actually is not far away. Like, because it was like, it was madness. Like, I got to the final against James, and even it didn't feel real. Like, we were driving out of the track, and and what it was even cooler, it was my birthday. So the final battle started at 12 o'clock, and I literally turned 15 as we left the start line. So yeah, good. Like, we finished the
Your
run.
life is a movie, Conor Shanahan. I swear.
James crashed into me on the last corner, on the last transition. So I knew I had won, and he drove up, like, thrown me into the air and was like, you fucking did it. He was like, what the fuck? And the crowd, I remember Keane Linner was standing next to me. The crowd sang happy birthday to me in Polish.
Oh, that is so cool.
Like, and it was like, I was like, what is going on? Like, I was like, this is crazy. Like, my phone shut down. My phone wouldn't even turn on. Like, there was that many messages, and it was like bananas. Like, it was just like crazy. And for me, I was still a fan. I was still a fan of James. Like, of course, I'm still a fan of James now, but I was still like, I just battled James Dean. Like, what? And like, I remember I went back to the truck, and my phone turned on. Like, and I had message from like Freddie Asbo, Daigo Saito resharing the chase run. You know, that for me, like, Mad Mike was texting me, and I was like, this is crazy. Yeah. Like, and I remember James actually has a video of me on his phone. Like, I was still in my race suit covered in champagne, and I literally fell asleep up against the counter, like, scrolling on Instagram, like, with my phone in my hand. I was just done. Like, but yeah, that was like probably the turning point of my career, being like, okay, now we really can give it a go. And I think probably, to be honest, that battle has got me what I got. It's probably, being honest, the reason why I'm wearing this cap on my head, maybe, I'm not sure. You know, it played massive parts of different things and put me on the map. So then you fast forward, let's say, to now, and what's went on in between has 2 championships. 2018 was quite good, actually. My first year, I finished 5th in the championship with some bad luck also. And everybody was then like, okay, like, and I remember I won that event, and everybody was slating online and saying like, oh, it's the look of a kid, you know, he's not going to do it again. And I went to Hungary and qualified first at the next event, and I was like, fuck y'all.
Yeah.
You know, and then I was like, okay, I really want to start pushing and learning more. Then 2019 happened, which is probably still the worst year of my life. I built a new car, an S15, absolutely hated the thing. Had shit results all year, didn't get on good, and it was just annoying because I knew I was better than that.
It looked very cool though. Although you didn't obviously get the results you wanted, it looked fucking mint.
Like 2020, yeah, it was and then 2020 was probably one of the biggest achievements of my career, becoming a fully branded Red Bull athlete.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Stop, because I think I could let you. You are such a good storyteller, Conor. I could let you just rattle up. I feel like I've got to be a host to say stop. I wanna talk about this Red Bull deal, because this is a big deal. Just to have a company like, I mean, I drank the Red Bull just for you today, my friend. I had the Red Bull with me. Always a sugar-free one though, and it always annoys me when they don't bring this one to the events, because this is my favorite. But anyway, how did this come about? How were you approached by Red Bull? Because they are, I have to be, like, I'm speaking out of turn maybe, but they've got to be one of the biggest companies in the world at this point, especially involved in motorsports. I mean, they have F1, they have football, they've got their football teams, they've got F1, they've got you now in drifting, they've got Kuba, obviously, as well as one of their superstars. And they're so heavily involved in every aspect of sport. How did they find Conor Shanahan?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, touching off that journey point, so we came to probably end of 2018, I think. Yeah, end of 2018. It's quite bananas how this happened, to be honest. And it's probably, to be honest, the most emotional part of my career. Like, probably the part where I will look back and say, you know, that was, like, for me, the achievable of what I always wanted. You know, I've always, and it's not about the company. It's not that I always said that I wanted to be a Red Bull athlete. Of course, everybody would like to, but it was kind of the turning point, you know. I remember, like, for me, it was crazy, you know, like what happened. I was like 15, 16, knew how much pressure my mom and dad were under, which was like insane. There were so many times we should have stopped his career. Like, nobody has any idea of that stuff. Like, it's the time, money, what was invested. You know, like, there we often went to events where like we could barely afford to put diesel in the truck. Like, my mom and dad never stopped, and they would never change it. You know, they always like said that we want you to become successful, and it's. And I always swore to my mom and dad. My mom, I would be really close to my mom, and I always said to my mom, like when I was young, I was like, I promise you, I will make money from this sport. I was like, I promise you that this will become my business. And you know, I remember Drift Shifters was going on at the time when my Red Bull contract happened, and it's quite funny how this happened. So I was sitting at home on my couch downstairs, like 16. I was 16, I think, at the time.
Is that the Liverpool thing, that Drift Shifters?
Yeah, so all this kind of was going on at the time.
Yeah, I was up there. I got took up there by Toyota for that.
Oh, okay, class. Yeah. So it was cool. And so then somebody called me, or no, somebody left me a voicemail from Red Bull Ireland. And like, I never approached Red Bull. Like, Red Bull came to me, which makes even the story more sweeter. So I got a voicemail from Red Bull, Eamon from Red Bull Ireland, and it was like, "Oh, can you call me back when you get a chance? We want to speak to you about something." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." You know, and personally, I got told that Drift Shifters was supposed to come to Ireland. And I remember my brother was in Australia at the time. He was there with Luke Fink for like 2 months or something. And of course, if anything like that happened, he'd be the first person I'd run to and talk to about it. So I called him. I actually FaceTimed him, and I was like, somebody tried to call me from Red Bull today. I was like, I think it could be about Drift Shifters. And I actually didn't call him back for like a week. Like, I know, it's quite funny. So,
oh, for fuck's sake.
Then I got an email from Red Bull Ireland, and I was like, okay, I'll call him. And there was some other stuff going on, and I can't remember why I didn't. So I called him back, and I was like, I was like, I had a missed call from you, blah, blah, had a quick conversation, and he told me that they wanted me to become an athlete, and I was like, what? Like, honestly, that for me, like, I was literally jumping around the sitting room on the phone, like, being like, what the heck is going on? So obviously, I was still quite young, so I couldn't become a full branded athlete for Red Bull. And the story, I can't really go into too much detail here, but
don't say anything that you don't want to say.
Yeah. The story kind of evolution of how it happened is quite crazy. Like, so I was not a Red Bull athlete, but I was involved in Red Bull for a long time before it happened. Got involved with them, and I didn't become a fully fledged athlete until 2019. Yeah, 2019 or 2020, I think. Started 2020 with S15. And obviously, it was actually really frustrating at the time for me when all this was happening, because it was in the middle of COVID. So like,
I was about to ask, how did COVID affect the potential deal?
So I was getting delivered like all these race suits, fridges to my house. Car looked sick, talking about doing all these crazy events, and I was stuck at home. So I was like, oh, this is pretty shit. But you know, I think going back to the start of the story was like, I remember when I was a kid, if I went to the racetrack or if I was following somebody in sports, like Travis Pastrana was a hero for me when I was a kid. Like, I used to watch everything he used to do. And I think it was like, if you went to a racetrack and you've seen somebody wearing a Red Bull helmet, it's kind of like, gives you like verification that guy's a proper dude, you know?
Yeah, the validation that, oh shit, Red Bull picked him up.
Yeah,
it's like one of those. It's like if you see, like in anything, obviously there's brands and everything. So if you, you hear of someone being like an Adidas sponsored footballer, you're like, oh fuck, he must be like, or she must be top of their game. You know, if they're picking up these people, oh shit, they're selecting that person. Because I've got a friend that is a Monster Energy athlete who in freestyle mountain biking. So I've been around that a lot of my adult life, because he got picked up when we were, must have been 20 maybe. He got picked up by Monster, and he's been with them ever since. Like, they look after him really well. Sam Pilgrim, he's a mad fucker. But yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, you know, for me, when that happened, and like telling my mom and dad that after that phone call was probably the most proudest moment I think I've ever had. Like I was young, would have been like, I'm an emotional dude anyway, but I would never, you know, have been emotional in front of my parents. But it was like hard not to cry when I was telling them that, you know, because it's like, it was kind of like, it was more a reward for them than it was a reward for me, you know, because I think they kind of sat there afterwards and was like, you know, we done it, you know, we done what we always wanted to do with our kids. And so I think, you know, that's like, quite crazy. And I think like what's nice about that is like if I was to say something to my dad would always say to me like he would never change anything, but my dad always says to me like you have to do the same someday, like that's what's important for my parents.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of gave them like, a nice like there was a massive achievement. And I remember, so when I found out all of this, I got to do a show run outside of being an athlete. It was just the first time I met the company, and my mom and dad came with me, and we got put up in this like super nice hotel in Belfast. And I remember we were sitting down in the lobby after the show, and like the hotel was proper nice, and it was kind of the first event we ever done with Red Bull. And I remember my mom and dad were like, this is cool. Like they were like, this is fucking cool. And I was like, this is cool. I was like, it's pretty amazing. But then, so I got the phone call, knew that it was going to happen, had some meetings, and it was going on for probably a year and a half, to be honest, before I actually came an athlete. So it was quite nice to know that it was coming.
Yeah.
And, I called Jack. Jack was in Australia. And I think like for me, calling Jack was nice, but calling Jack was also a little bit like, because Jack has grew up in an era where it's Conor, his brother, has being the guy where people have been sponsoring him. People, and that's I understand that can be a little bit difficult sometimes. And he was obviously incredibly proud of me. When he put the body kit on the car, the first Red Bull car we had, like I think he will probably still speak about it and be like, that was like the best car was ever left his workshop. It was like, it was insane that he's just put a fully Red Bull race car on the ground for his brother. But I think a part of it obviously is like, because he's worked as hard as me, if not harder, and like I think a part of him was probably like, fuck, like I wanted that, or
of course.
You're obviously gonna small bit think like that, and he's not that type of person, but I can understand it, but I could call him and we were talking about it and he was like, holy shit. He was like, that's crazy. And he didn't say much on the phone, and then he texted me like 2 hours later being like, that's fucking amazing. Like he was like, that's mind blowing. And I was like, I still don't believe it. So I went on for like this year and a half of becoming an athlete. And to be honest, like being an athlete now is like surreal. It's a little bit like, it's normal for me now. I've been working with them for like 5 years. It's just it's an incredible company. And I honestly, like when I won the championship, and Red Bull is a company, what's so big, like maybe sometimes gets like overlooked. I've like, if I work with a company who invests a lot of money with me and it's kind of like a family run company, I'm very close to that company, and I very appreciate that company. So I think like sometimes for like what Red Bull do gets a little bit like overlooked. But for me, it was like winning that championship was like, they were the company 5 years ago who came to me and believed, like seen something. And the reason why I became an athlete with Red Bull, being honest, is that they signed me because they knew that there was belief that I could win. And that was the reason. So when it happened, it was like, fuck, I was like, that's like, such a cool story that also they have, that they played such a huge part in it. So I think, like working with them now is honestly like, it's mind blowing. Like the stuff I've got to do, I've got to meet Max Verstappen, I've got to do stuff with all the big boys. And I think
tell me about the thing you did. Was it in Milton Keynes where you got to like Max Verstappen was there in his F1 car, right? And then you're there in the drift car. So how was that? Or just being like one of the superstars there,
that's what's crazy. Like, but that's what's crazy about the company is like I've done some projects like what have been dreams, like drift at Moll's Gap in Ireland, which is like one of the most famous roads in Ireland, like which would have never happened if it wasn't for Red Bull. And there's so much stuff where you're like, this is like bananas, and it's like probably, to be honest, like the biggest, I think, thing about working with a company, like I remember I got delivered my first box of hats and I put it on and like it was just like, wow. I was like, I didn't expect it to feel that good. My first helmet came and the helmet was sick, and it's just like little things where you kind of like it kind of makes you appreciate everything you've done and what everybody's done around you. It kind of is like a bit of validation to be like, fuck, that's a proper company working with a guy, so it's quite nice. The biggest problem is trying to get my friends to stop robbing my Red Bull clothes when they all love them and I can't give them any, so it's like, will you stop taking stuff, but it's cool. It's been an incredible journey of working with them, and I'm proud to say that I work with them as well. It's a nice feeling for sure.
Well, hopefully there'll be many, many more years to come, because obviously I get to work with like the media side of Red Bull at Drift Masters, and they're all brilliant. Like they're all nice to deal with, and it's so great to see that
you and Jack, because I know Jack has his own sponsor deals on the art for his stuff as well. Like just growing and being able to stay in this motorsport, because I genuinely don't feel like drifting will be European drifting would feel the same without either of you, because there is that like that magical chaos that happens in your pits that is just like I remember I think I was at a BDC round. Yeah, I was at a BDC round one year. I can't remember, maybe 2017 at Rockingham, and I saw your dad put Jack's car, I think, on its side to take the gearbox out. Like the team didn't, they just pushed the car onto the side to take the gearbox out. And I was like,
but like
the
funny thing is that anyone who knows my dad personally knows my dad is crazy. Like I've seen my dad do some stuff what he shouldn't have done. No. But like my dad would, like, if I was in that final in the ground at a stadium last 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, and my car broke down and I told my dad that he had to cut off his hand for me to win this championship, he would have got a hacksaw and cut it off.
Without even thinking about it.
That's I've seen him do stuff where he goes so crazy about winning. Like he's so obsessed with the passion. Is that like I've seen him do stuff where I'm like, man, like you actually need to get checked. Like, but he's like, and I'm like, what? Like, and it like all for the good, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But like he does stuff where I'm like, holy, go to the complete other side of the pits, like,
Yeah.
And it's like nobody has the passion what he has had, like nobody has.
I have a question.
Invested that much,
I have a question. In Finland, when it was you versus Jack in the final, was he gutted that he was missing it because he didn't make it that weekend, right? So like,
it's the talking point of the house. We slag him all the time about it now.
First one he's ever missed, and it's the one that you two boys were in the final.
Yeah, he was racing himself that weekend, and he just decided not to go. We're really kind of unsure about it. First drift event he's ever missed, I'd say. First ever competition event he's ever missed for me and Jack, I'd say. So it was there. Yeah, we're a little bit unsure why it happened, and we were like, what's going on? And he was just like, I just wanted to go race myself with my friends, and we were like, cool, whatever. And it turns out that we both got to the final. So I was like,
and you put on a show as well. I sent you them a couple of videos that I got, didn't I? Because I went and put myself. I didn't know if I was meant to be there or not. But the way I kind of see it is that if I'm not meant to be somewhere, I'll get told off, right? Like so, and then I can just go, oh, sorry.
It's easier to ask for forgiveness than
to ask for permission. You're right, yeah. So I'd gone and stood like in the little like bird nest bit in the middle of the track, and I was like, I'm just gonna watch this shit from here because like. I've known, like I said, known you two for over 7 years, and you've always been so great and just courteous and kind to me. So I was like, I just want to watch the two boys to have it out, man. A best man win. Do you know what I mean? And then I got to then see you both at LZ World Tour once again. I got to stand at the side of the track and do the presenting on the live stream. That was fucking tits. And then I got to come out and be like, oh, Jack's had his own back a little bit here, even though you're a borrowed cars, And I love that. I love the story, and I hope that it obviously all stays as it is and keeps growing for the both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been unreal. So
there's another thing I want to ask you about.
That's what I was about to say. If there's anything else, because I'll ramble all day.
Yeah, no. I think we're gonna have to do another one of these, Conor, because I haven't even got through half of the stuff I want to talk to you about. But I won't keep you too much longer. I think we're going for about an hour and a half, hour 40 minutes, which is a really long time. But there's one major thing I want to touch on that we haven't, and it was the Top Gear thing. With you getting to give Hammond some grief, which was awesome. And how was that for you? Because how old were you when that opportunity came around? You must have been 14, 15? 13 still, yeah. So I 13-year-old and you're on Top Gear. What was that whole experience like? And how did that come about? How did that opportunity arise?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, actually. It was like probably like the first big like major thing I'd done. It was mad. Like the project itself was crazy. Like it gave me a good insight into what way that side of media works, and met lots of connections also through it. How it came up was actually I actually think like Bagsy played a big part in it. Okay. So Bagsy was involved in the project.
He was teaching Richard, right? Wasn't that it? He was like the guy teaching Richard.
So yeah, he was involved in the project side of it in a way, and I think they were like looking for to make the story a lot like better and make it a bit different. So yeah, I think Bagsy obviously recommended us, and then they got in touch, and I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to do it, and I went there, and it was sick. Like it was so cool. It's still getting shared everywhere actually. Like I still see it every now and again, and I was so small there as well. I was like a kid, like I didn't even know what was going on, but yeah, it was quite cool to do stuff like that. Richard was like such a cool guy. Like like just a normal dude. Like no, there was no like, fame in him. It was just like sitting in the back of the car talking about some stuff, waiting to do what we needed to do. And it was quite cool. It was a cool opportunity as a kid to experience like, okay, I'm actually going to be on TV. It's quite crazy.
It's amazing, man. I remember seeing that and just being like, man, this kid's got something. When you just see, and you were giving him grief, weren't you? I can't remember exactly what you said, but yeah,
I can't remember. I think it's like something like 3 times my age and still the same size or something.
Yeah, something like that. It was really funny, and like it made the whole thing great, and it was just so cool to see because that was just when I was starting to like really get invested in drifting, and it was just so cool, man. Like I was like, this is sick. But Conor, I've had you for a good amount of time today, man, and if I can steal you again in a few weeks or a few months or whatever, like. We can run through the rest of this because otherwise this could end up being a 3-4 hour podcast. And I know not just that I wouldn't be against that, but it's getting dark in England early now, and I need to walk the dog. So I think let's just end it. What are you doing over the winter months until the series all kick off again? Like, what are your plans from now until then?
Probably just carry on now with some work, prepare everything for next year. We're building a new race trailer for the team, so that takes some work and. Decide what we're doing with the cars. I'll either build a new car or else refresh the one I have. So me and Jack have some work to do to figure out that. And driving wise, I'll be driving in Scotland all winter. So I'll be doing the full winter championship, getting some training in on the simulator, driving with the boys and having fun.
You should consider live streaming you on the sim, making it like a Twitch channel.
Yeah, I actually done it before when I was younger. I done it on Twitch a couple of times. But yeah, same thing goes as everything. It's just trying to find time to
find
do
the time to do it. Yeah. The only thing I could recommend there would just be a set up the OBS because I used to do all this live streaming of a video game I played as well. And literally every time you go live, just hit live. Don't even think about it. Just be like, bump, we're live now. There we go. Right, I'm going to be doing my thing, but we're live and get the chat off your phone or whatever. It'd just be great just for people like myself just to tune in and be like, what's Conor up to now? Like, this is cool. Like, and obviously you said you can't speak on some stuff that might happen next year, but once you do you want to drop me a message and then we can talk? And
yeah, for sure. There'll be lots of exciting things going on, hopefully. It's been a good year for me, even since the start of the year, working on different things and meeting new people and looking at different opportunities is always the goal. So it's quite nice to know that there is options there right now. But yeah, of course, I'd like to go back and defend the Drift Master Championship too.
I think we'd love to see it, man. I think that I can see this beautiful storyline of UV Laurie Heinonen becoming a major thing over the next years, along with Peter Vychek, and Jack. And
it's like I feel like now I'm kind of possibly in the prime of my driving and stuff. So I'd like to break some records and try to go back to back and stuff and see how long it's possible. But that's what drifting is amazing right now, is that there's so many guys this year where I was like, these guys are going to be incredible. Like you have the Eric Gotchas, all the guys who are making
Kevin Pascoli. He is ready to start winning stuff, man. I spoke to him a couple last week, and oh my goodness, he is like absolutely. This whole winter is to training for him. He is so focused.
That's the thing. What was a little bit separated from drifting is that it was never took to the level of like you have to train, you have to, you were either naturally good or you weren't. But now there's guys actually putting in like graft to be incredible drivers. So I think that will become overpowered and the people who are putting in the work will start to show,
And you said you might build a new car. How do you go about deciding what chassis to use? Because obviously it's such a big decision to make because it's going to be,
I don't want to change. Okay. I'd like to stay GT86 if I can. Just build another one. I love the thing and I'm so comfortable in the car. It's like, it's so good, to be honest. That car it's mind blowing actually every time I drive it, like actually how confident I can be. It's just chasing. The car is so good to chase driving. It's like, it's even hard to explain like compared to other cars, but GT86 are working on some other things with other companies and stuff. Let's see. But if I was to choose in the morning, for sure, I wouldn't change. Maybe a GR86 would be nice as well.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, we'll look forward to it. So Conor Shanahan. It's Conor Shanahan 79 on everything with the blue ticks. So go find him, go follow him. His name will have been underneath him if you're watching on the YouTube. Is there anything finals you want to say before I let you go, sir?
I just appreciate it, man. And
don't be silly, man. I appreciate you, my friend. You've given me some time and
conversation of cool dog as well, man.
He's finally showed up. Come on, buddy, up here. Come on, just as we're finishing. But yeah, he's
into the final shot.
Yeah, so he turned up just as we're finishing. We look forward to seeing what the winter holds for you, dude. I look forward to following your progression throughout whatever happens in your career.
And I do need to get you back on, man, because like I said, I got about half of a list of questions here that we didn't even touch on,
for sure.
Which is amazing. So thank you so much, Conor, and thank everybody for listening. Go check out the Shanahans and Conor Shanahan on all of the socials. Show him some love. Without these guys, drifting would not be the same. I promise you that, from the ground level all the way up to the top. It means a lot. And try and get over. And if you ever see him out on the track, go and see if he'll skid with you. You know, why not? He's
absolutely.
He'll scare the absolute daylights out of you chasing you. So don't worry. It'll be good. It'll be good for your heart. I promise. Everybody, hit subscribe. Give us a little rating on the what is it called? A podcast on Spotify, on Apple. Leave us some stars, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much, guys. Let me just end that recording.